The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of floating crystal platforms. Light from 1,000 different stars filtered through the transparent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the assembly of alien delegates. Species from every corner of the known galaxy had gathered here, as they had for the past 10,000 years, to decide the fate of civilizations. Ambassador Al stood at the central podium, his 4 eyes scanning the gathered representatives. His skin rippled with patterns of authority as he prepared to speak. Behind him, a holographic display showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in the void of space. "The Council has reached a decision regarding the species known as humans," Al announced. His voice echoed through translation devices in 100 different languages. "After careful review of their actions over the past 50 years of observation, we have determined that humanity poses a significant threat to galactic stability." Murmurs spread through the assembly like waves across water. The delegates clicked their mandibles in approval. The floating gas beings of the Nephron Collective pulsed with colors of agreement. Even the ancient stone-like, who rarely showed any emotion, seemed to nod their massive heads. On a small platform near the back of the Great Hall, a single human woman stood alone. Dr. Sarah was Earth's first and only ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had been given this position just 3 months ago, after humanity's first contact with alien life. Now she watched as the entire galaxy turned against her species. "The charges against humanity are as follows," Al continued, reading from a glowing tablet. "First, humans have demonstrated excessive aggression in their history. Their planet's records show continuous warfare for over 10,000 years. Second, humans have developed nuclear weapons capable of destroying their own world multiple times over. Third, and most concerning, humans have shown a pattern of refusing to accept their natural place in any hierarchy." Sarah felt her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to speak, to defend her people, but the Council's rules were clear. Newly contacted species had no voice in decisions regarding their own fate. They were considered too primitive to understand the complexities of galactic politics. "Furthermore," Al said, "our psychological analysis of the human species reveals deeply troubling patterns. They are driven by emotions that most civilized species abandoned millions of years ago. Fear, anger, jealousy, and something they call hope continue to influence their decision-making. They cannot be trusted to act rationally." The ambassador paused and looked directly at Sarah. His 4 eyes showed no hatred, only the cold certainty of someone who believed they were doing the right thing. "The Council has therefore voted to implement Protocol 7. Earth and its solar system will be placed under permanent quarantine. All human spacecraft will be disabled. Any attempt by humans to leave their solar system will be met with immediate destruction. They will remain isolated until such time as they either evolve beyond their current state or destroy themselves, as most primitive species eventually do." Sarah finally found her voice. "May I speak?" The assembly fell silent. It was unusual for a quarantined species to request anything. Al tilted his head, considering. After a long moment, he nodded. "You may speak, but understand that nothing you say will change the Council's decision." Sarah stepped forward, her shoes clicking against the crystal platform. She was a small figure among giants and beings of pure energy, but her voice was steady. "I will not beg for mercy," she said. "I will not promise that humans will change. You have already decided that we are dangerous, and perhaps you are right. We are aggressive. We have fought countless wars. We have built weapons that could end all life on our world." The delegates shifted uncomfortably. This was not the pleading they had expected. "But I want you to understand something," Sarah continued. "Everything you fear about us is the same thing that has allowed us to survive. Our planet has tried to kill us in every possible way. Ice ages, plagues, earthquakes, asteroid impacts. We have faced extinction dozens of times, and every time we refused to die." She looked around the hall at the comfortable, ancient species who had evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates. You call our emotions primitive, but those emotions are what drive us forward. Fear taught us to prepare for danger. Anger gave us the strength to fight against impossible odds. And hope, that thing you find so confusing, hope is what makes us believe that tomorrow can be better than today. Al raised a hand. Your speech is noted, Ambassador. However, the Council's decision stands. You will be returned to Earth immediately. The quarantine field will be activated within one standard galactic day. We suggest you spend your remaining time saying goodbye to the stars. Sarah was escorted from the Great Hall by 2 guards, their stone bodies moving with surprising grace. As she walked, she noticed something strange. The delegates were not looking at her with pity or contempt. They were looking at her with something else entirely. Fear. They were afraid of a species they had just sentenced to eternal isolation. A species with no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no weapons that could threaten a single galactic warship. They were afraid of humans. And in that moment, Sarah understood something important. The Council was not punishing humanity for what they had done. They were punishing humanity for what they might become. The transport ship that carried Sarah back to Earth was cold and silent. The crew refused to speak to her, treating her like a contagious disease. She sat alone in a small cabin, watching through the viewport as the stars streaked past. When the ship finally reached Earth's solar system, Sarah saw the quarantine field being constructed. Massive automated platforms were taking position around the outer edges of the solar system, creating an invisible barrier that no human ship could cross. Energy weapons charged and ready to destroy any vessel that tried to escape. The transport landed in Geneva, where the United Nations headquarters had been hastily converted into Earth's new center of government. World leaders from every nation were waiting, their faces showing the same mix of fear and determination. President of the United States was the first to approach Sarah as she stepped off the alien ship. "What happened?" he asked, though the broadcasts had already told everyone the basics. "They were afraid of us," Sarah said. "Not of what we are now, but of what we could become. They looked at our history, at our weapons, at our refusal to give up, and they saw a threat." "A threat to what?" asked. Sarah looked up at the sky, where the last stars were still visible before the quarantine field fully activated. "To everything they have built, to their comfortable, peaceful galaxy where every species knows its place. We are chaos to them. We are unpredictable, and they cannot allow anything unpredictable to exist." The Chinese Premier Wei stepped forward. "So what do we do now except our prison?" Sarah shook her head. "They made one mistake. They assumed that putting us in a cage would keep us contained. They do not understand that humans have been breaking out of cages since the first one was built." Over the following weeks, the full weight of the quarantine became clear. All communication with the outside galaxy was cut off. The few pieces of alien technology that humans had acquired stopped functioning. Earth was truly alone. But instead of falling into despair, something remarkable happened. The nations of Earth, which had spent centuries fighting each other, began to unite. Old enemies sat down at the same tables. Resources were shared. Scientists from rival countries worked together in laboratories that had never existed before. The first major project was called Project Prometheus. Its goal was simple but seemingly impossible: find a way through the quarantine field. Dr. James, a physicist from Britain, led the research team. For 3 years, they studied the field from every possible angle. They sent probes that were instantly destroyed. They analyzed the energy signatures. They ran millions of simulations. And then, quite by accident, a young researcher named discovered something extraordinary. "The field is not designed to block everything," she reported to the assembled leaders. "It is designed to block known forms of faster-than-light travel, the methods used by every other species in the galaxy. But there are theoretical methods that no other species has ever developed because they never needed to. What kind of methods? President asked. Pulled up a holographic display showing complex mathematical equations. The Council assumes that all advanced civilizations will follow the same path of technological development. They find certain basic discoveries first, then build upon them in predictable ways. But humans have always been different. We have always found unexpected solutions to impossible problems. She pointed to a section of the equations. There is a theoretical method of space travel that was abandoned by the 6 million years ago because it was considered too dangerous and too inefficient. It requires folding space itself, creating temporary tunnels that collapse almost immediately after use. Why was it abandoned? Wei asked. Because it requires something that no other species in the galaxy possesses, said. It requires a crew willing to risk their lives on a one-way trip into the unknown. The success rate in early tests was less than 5%. They considered it unacceptable. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was suggesting. But we are not Sarah said quietly. We are humans, and 5% is better than 0. The development of the fold drive, as it came to be called, took another 10 years. During that time, Earth transformed. The isolation that was meant to break humanity instead forged it into something stronger. Global cooperation became the new normal. Children grew up dreaming not of war, but of the stars that had been to them. When the first fold drive was finally ready, there was no shortage of volunteers. Thousands applied for the first mission, knowing that they would probably never return. In the end, a crew of 12 was selected from every continent on Earth. The ship was named the Defiance. On the night before launch, Sarah, now in her 70s but still serving as Earth's symbolic ambassador to the galaxy that had rejected them, addressed the crew. The Council thought they were protecting themselves by locking us away, she said. They thought they were preventing us from becoming a threat, but they forgot the most important thing about humans. We do not accept limits, we do not give up, and we never, ever stay where we are put. The crew of the Defiance saluted her and boarded their ship. The fold drive activated with a flash of light so bright that it was visible across half the planet. For a moment, the ship seemed to stretch across space itself, becoming a bridge between two distant points. Then it vanished. In the Galactic Council's monitoring station, alarms began to sound. Something impossible had just happened. A ship had left the quarantine zone, not by breaking through the field but by going around it entirely, through a dimension of space that the Council did not even know existed. Ambassador Al was awakened from his sleep cycle by a frantic aide. The humans, the aide said, his skin patterns flickering with panic. The humans are gone. Al felt something he had not experienced in 1,000 years: fear. The humans had not stayed in their cage. And now no one knew where they were. The Defiance emerged from the fold jump in a region of space that no galactic chart had ever mapped. The ship shuddered and groaned, its hull stressed beyond any safe limit. 3 of the 12 crew members were unconscious. 2 more were bleeding from their ears and noses, but they were alive. Captain was the first to speak. Her voice was rough, her throat dry, but her words were clear. Navigation, where are we? Lieutenant Wei, grandson of the legendary Sarah, wiped blood from his face and checked his instruments. His hands were shaking, but his training held. We are approximately 4,000 light-years from Earth, far beyond the quarantine zone. The Council's sensors cannot reach this distance. A cheer went up from the crew despite their injuries. They had done it. They had escaped from an impossible prison. Doctor's theory had worked. But their celebration was short-lived. The ship's engineer, a gruff Scotsman named Malcolm, reported that the fold drive was completely burned out. It would take months to repair, assuming they could find the materials. and their conventional engines, while functional, would need repairs before they could even attempt to find a habitable world. "So we are free," said Mission Specialist, "but stranded." Captain looked out at the unfamiliar stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, locked away in its cage. Somewhere out there was a galaxy full of species who believed humanity deserved to be forgotten. "We are not stranded," she said. "We are explorers. This is what we were made for." The crew spent the next 3 months repairing what they could and rationing their supplies. During this time, they studied the space around them. Long-range sensors detected several star systems within reach of their conventional engines. At least 2 showed signs of planets in the habitable zone. Wei discovered something else during his scans. Scattered throughout this uncharted region were the remains of an ancient civilization, cities floating dead in space, ships frozen for millions of years, technology that even the Galactic Council had never seen. "Whoever they were," Wei reported, "they were here long before the Council existed, and they were far more advanced." "What happened to them?" asked. "Unknown, but there are no signs of war or catastrophe. It is as if they simply left." The crew debated whether to investigate the ruins or focus on finding a new home. In the end, they decided to do both. They set course for the nearest habitable world while collecting data on the ancient civilization as they traveled. The planet they found was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, and atmosphere almost identical to Earth's. They named it New Dawn. As the Defiance descended through the clouds, the crew saw something that took their breath away. The planet was not empty. On the largest continent, surrounded by dense forest, sat a city. Not ruins, but a living city with lights and movement. "Impossible," Malcolm whispered. "The scans showed no intelligent life." "Maybe they did not want to be found," suggested. Captain made a decision that would change the course of human history. Instead of retreating, she ordered the ship to land near the city. They had come too far to run from the unknown. The beings who emerged from the city were unlike anything in galactic records. They were tall, almost 3 meters, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost musical. Through gestures and patience, the 2 species began to communicate. The beings called themselves and they had been waiting for visitors for a very long time. Over the following weeks, the crew of the Defiance learned the story. They were the last survivors of the ancient civilization whose ruins dotted this region of space. Millions of years ago, their people had spread across the galaxy, building wonders that modern species could not even imagine. But they had grown tired of material existence. Most of them had transcended physical form, moving on to something beyond. Only a small group had chosen to remain, to tend the old worlds and wait for the next species worthy of inheriting what they had left behind. "We have watched the galaxy for a long time," said Eth, the leader of the Council believes they rule, but they only manage. They have forgotten how to dream, how to strive, how to become more than they are." "And you think humans are different?" asked. Eth's colors shifted to a warm gold. "You escaped from a prison that every other species would have accepted. You crossed space using a method that the rest of the galaxy abandoned out of fear. You came to us not with weapons but with open hands. Yes, Captain, humans are very different." They made an offer. They would share their knowledge with humanity, their technology, their understanding of the universe. In exchange, they asked only one thing, that humans would carry that knowledge forward, using it not to conquer but to grow. It was an offer beyond any price. Captain sent a message back to Earth using a communication method they provided, a system that bypassed the quarantine field entirely. The message traveled through dimensions the Council did not know existed, arriving at Earth's receivers within minutes despite the vast distance. "We are alive," the message read. "We have found friends, and we are coming back to free you." On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The crew of the Defiance had not only survived but had discovered something incredible. Hope, that emotion the Council called primitive, burned brighter than ever. Construction began immediately on a fleet of new ships. The technology, transmitted through the secret communication channel, revolutionized everything. Within 5 years, Earth had 100-fold capable vessels. Within 10, they had 1,000. But the humans did not forget the lesson of the quarantine. They did not rush to confront the Council. Instead, they built quietly in regions of space the Council did not monitor. They established colonies on dozens of worlds, each one a sanctuary for human creativity and ambition. Meanwhile, in the heart of the galaxy, the Council was in chaos. The escape of the Defiance had been impossible to hide. Within days, every species knew that the humans had broken free. The quarantine field, which was supposed to be unbreakable, had been bypassed by a technology no one understood. Ambassador Al faced the angry assembly, with his skin rippling in patterns of stress. "How did they escape?" demanded the High Matriarch, her mandibles clicking with fury. "Your people designed the quarantine field. You assured us it was perfect." "The field is perfect," Al insisted. "They did not break through it. They went around it through some kind of folded space. Our scientists are still trying to understand the method." "Then find them," the matriarch ordered. "Hunt them down before they become a true threat." But finding the humans proved impossible. Every search party returned empty-handed. The humans had vanished into uncharted space, leaving no trail that Council technology could follow. Years passed. The Council grew complacent. Some began to believe that the humans had simply died in the void, unable to survive without galactic support. Others argued that a single escaped ship posed no real threat. The galaxy had more pressing concerns. They were wrong. In the shadows of the galaxy, humanity was growing. The alliance with the had given them access to knowledge that the Council could not imagine. New propulsion systems, medical technology that extended human by centuries, construction techniques that allowed cities to be built in months rather than decades. Most importantly, they taught humans about the true nature of the galaxy. The Council was not the first galactic government, nor would it be the last. 100 civilizations had risen and fallen over billions of years. Most had collapsed under their own weight, becoming so focused on stability that they forgot how to adapt. "The Council will fall," Eth told Captain, who had become de facto leader of humanity's expansion. "Not through war, but through stagnation. They have stopped growing, and any species that stops growing begins to die." "We do not want them to die," said. "We want them to let us live." "Then you must show them that they have no choice." The first Human Federation Navy ship to enter Council space arrived exactly 25 years after the Defiance had escaped. It appeared without warning at the edge of territory, a sleek vessel of impossible design. The patrol ships that intercepted it were confident in their superiority. Their weapons were the most advanced in the galaxy. Their shields could withstand any known attack. They ordered the human ship to surrender. Commander James, great-great-grandson of Sarah, responded calmly. "We are not here to fight. We are here to deliver a message. The Human Federation requests a meeting with the Galactic Council to discuss the end of Earth's quarantine." The commander laughed. "You are in no position to request anything, human. Surrender your ship or we will destroy you." James sighed. "I was hoping you would be reasonable." What happened next became legend. The human ship did not fight the patrol. Instead, it simply vanished, reappearing instantly on the opposite side of the fleet. The weapons fired at empty space. Their sensors could not track the human vessel's movements. For 3 hours, the human ship played with the fleet like a cat with mice. It never fired a single shot, never harmed a single alien, but it demonstrated beyond any doubt that it could have destroyed the entire patrol if it wished. Finally, Commander broadcast a final message. Please inform the Council that we will be waiting. The coordinates are being transmitted now. We suggest they do not send warships." The message reached the Council within days. Emergency sessions were called. Panic spread through the Assembly as reports confirmed what seemed impossible. The humans had technology that made the galaxy's most advanced weapons look like toys. Ambassador Al, now old and weary, addressed the terrified delegates. "We have two choices," he said. "We can go to war with humanity, a war we will almost certainly lose. Or we can accept that we made a mistake 25 years ago and try to find a peaceful solution." The debate raged for weeks. Many species refused to believe that humanity had become so powerful. They demanded a military response, convinced that Galactic might would crush any human resistance. Others, including Al himself, argued for caution. The humans had shown that they could have destroyed the patrol but chose not to. That was not the behavior of a conquering species. That was the behavior of someone who wanted to talk. In the end, fear won over pride. A council delegation was assembled to meet the humans at the coordinates they had provided. Al, despite his age, insisted on leading it personally. He had started this conflict. He would see how it ended. The location was a star system that council records showed as empty. But when the delegation arrived, they found something else entirely. Orbiting the system's sun was a station larger than any structure the Council had ever built. Ships of human design patrolled the space around it, more ships than many species had in their entire fleets. And on the station itself, visible through viewports, were humans. Thousands of them, living, working, laughing. 25 years of exile had not broken humanity. It had made them stronger. Captain, now Admiral and leader of the Human Federation, welcomed the Council delegation personally. She was old now, her hair white, her face lined with age. But her eyes were the same as they had been when she first commanded the Defiance, determined, unbreakable, and filled with something the Council still could not understand. "Hope. Welcome to Station 1, she said. "We have a lot to discuss." Al looked around at the impossible achievements surrounding him. A species that had been confined to a single planet just a generation ago had built all of this, had spread across unknown space, had surpassed everything the Council thought they knew about technological development. "Yes," he said quietly, "I believe we do." The negotiations would be long, the outcome uncertain. But standing on that station, surrounded by the evidence of human resilience, Al understood something for the first time. They had not just failed to destroy humanity. They had created something they could not control. And there was no going back. The negotiations between the Human Federation and the Galactic Council lasted for 117 days. Each session brought new arguments, new demands, and new revelations that shook the foundations of galactic politics. Admiral led the human delegation with patience that surprised everyone, including her own people. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She simply presented facts, one after another, until the Council had no choice but to listen. The first demand was simple: end the quarantine of Earth. Ambassador Al agreed immediately. The quarantine had already been proven useless. There was no point maintaining a barrier that humans could bypass whenever they wished. The second demand was more complicated: full recognition of the Human Federation as a sovereign galactic power, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. This caused an uproar. Many species argued that humanity had not earned such status. They had not served the required centuries of observation. They had not demonstrated peaceful intentions over generations. They were still, in the eyes of the law, a primitive species under restriction. The law also said we could never leave our solar system, James pointed out during one session. That law failed. Perhaps others need to be reconsidered. The debate continued for weeks. Species that had never agreed on anything united against human recognition. Species that had been enemies for suddenly found common cause. The galaxy had not seen such political chaos in thousands of years. But slowly, opinion began to shift. The humans on Station 1 did not act like conquerors. They shared food with the delegates. They answered questions honestly, even when the answers made them look bad. They admitted to their history of violence, their capacity for destruction, and their many failures. And they showed something else, something that made the delegates uncomfortable in ways they could not explain. Compassion. When a delegate fell ill during the negotiations, human doctors treated her without being asked. When a Nephron Collective member became separated from its main body and began to fade, human engineers built a containment field to preserve it until rescue arrived. When supplies ran low for species with unusual dietary needs, human ships made journeys to distant worlds to find what was required. "Why do you help us?" Al asked one evening as they shared a meal in her private quarters. "We imprisoned your entire species. We condemned you to extinction. By any standard, you should hate us." Took a sip of wine, a drink she had brought from New Dawn's first vineyards. "Hate takes energy," she said. "Energy we needed for survival. Besides, you were afraid. Fear makes species do terrible things. We have done terrible things out of fear ourselves. Who are we to judge?" Al was silent for a long moment. In his 1,000 years of life, he had met thousands of species. None of them had ever responded to injustice with understanding. "You are a strange species," he finally said. "Yes," agreed with a smile, "we know." The breakthrough came on day 83. A junior delegate from a species known for their silence, requested permission to speak. It was the first time it had addressed the full council in over 200 years. The stone-like being rose to its full height, nearly 4 meters of living crystal and mineral. When it spoke, its voice was like mountains grinding together. "We have watched this debate with patience," it said. "We have heard arguments for and against recognition, but we believe you are all missing the essential point." The assembly fell silent. Even Al leaned forward, curious what wisdom the ancient species had to offer. "The humans escaped our prison. They developed technology that surpasses our own. They built a civilization in regions we believed were empty. They did all of this in 25 years. The paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "In that same time, how much did any of our species accomplish? What did we build? What did we discover? What did we overcome?" No one answered. "The truth is painful but necessary," they continued. "We have become stagnant, comfortable. We maintain what our ancestors built, but we create nothing new. The humans are the first species in 10,000 years to show us what growth looks like, and we are so frightened by that growth that we cannot see the opportunity it represents." "What opportunity?" the High Matriarch demanded. "To learn from them, to be inspired by them, to remember what it felt like to be young and ambitious and unafraid of the future." The turned its ancient eyes toward the human delegation. "They are not our enemies. They are our salvation, if we are wise enough to accept them." The vote was held 3 days later. It was closer than anyone expected. Recognition passed by just 17 votes out of over 1,000. But it passed. The Human Federation became the member of the Galactic Council. Earth's quarantine was officially ended. And for the first time in galactic history, a species had gone from exile to equality in a single generation. The celebrations on Earth lasted for weeks. Sarah, now over 100 years old, watched the festivities from her home in Geneva. She had lived long enough to see her species rise from prisoners to partners. It was more than she had ever dared to hope. Admiral visited her the day after the formal recognition ceremony. The 2 women sat in Sarah's garden, surrounded by flowers from a dozen different worlds. "We did it," said. "Everything you started with that first speech, it all led here." Sarah shook her head. "I did nothing. I was just one voice. You are the ones who made it real, you and the crew of the Defiance. You and everyone who refused to give up." "What happens now?" asked. Sarah looked up at the sky, where transport ships were already carrying humans to destinations across the galaxy. New opportunities, new challenges, new worlds to explore. "Now," she said, "we show them who we really are." In the years that followed, humanity spread across the galaxy in ways that no one had predicted. They did not build empires or conquer territories. Instead, they did something far more effective. They made friends. Human traders established routes to worlds that had been ignored by the major powers. Human doctors brought medicine to species that could not afford galactic healthcare. Human engineers helped rebuild infrastructure on planets devastated by ancient wars. Human artists created works that transcended language and culture, touching something universal in every species that encountered them. Slowly, the perception of humanity changed. Where once they had been seen as dangerous primitives, they became known as builders, healers, and dreamers. Species that had opposed their recognition began seeking alliances. Worlds that had feared them began welcoming them. The council itself transformed. Human representatives, once excluded from all proceedings, became some of the most active voices in galactic politics. They advocated for reforms that had been discussed for centuries but never implemented. They pushed for exploration of unknown regions. They challenged the comfortable stagnation that had held the galaxy in place for. Not everyone was pleased with these changes. Some species resented human influence. Some believed that the old ways were better. Conflicts arose, tensions built, and there were moments when it seemed like the fragile peace might shatter. But humans had learned something during their 25 years of exile. They had learned that power alone was not enough, that technology alone was not enough, that even friendship alone was not enough. What truly mattered was trust, and trust had to be earned, one action at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. They watched all of this from their distant worlds. They had given humanity the tools to grow, but they had not interfered in how those tools were used. Now, they finally spoke again. Eth, the ancient being who had first welcomed Captain, contacted the Human Federation through the secret communication network. "You have exceeded our expectations," Eth said. "Most species, given the power you now possess, would have sought revenge against those who wronged them. You chose a different path. Revenge would have made us no better than what they feared we would become." The current Federation president, a descendant of the Defiance crew, replied, "We wanted to prove them wrong, not prove them right." "Then you have succeeded," Eth said, "and now we have one final gift to offer." The gift was knowledge, the complete history and scientific achievements of the civilization, preserved in data crystals that contained more information than every library in the galaxy combined. Technology that could reshape stars, medicine that could cure any disease, understanding of physics that made even the fold drive look primitive. "Why give this to us?" the president asked. "Why not to the council or to everyone?" "Because you will use it wisely," Eth said, "and because you will share it with others when they are ready. The council is not ready yet, but with your influence they will be, in time." The transfer of knowledge took years. Humans carefully studied each piece of information, understanding it fully before moving on to the next. They did not rush. They did not hoard. And when other species showed genuine interest, they shared what they had learned. 50 years after the end of Earth's quarantine, the galaxy was almost unrecognizable. Medical advances had increased across all species. New propulsion technology had made travel between distant stars as simple as crossing a room. Ancient enemies had become trading partners. Former rivals had become allies. And at the center of it all were the humans, not as rulers or conquerors, but as catalysts, as examples, as proof that even the most hopeless situations could be overcome. Ambassador Al, in the final years of his extraordinarily long life, wrote his memoirs. The work was titled The Greatest Mistake, and it became required reading for young diplomats across the galaxy. In the final chapter, he described a conversation he had with Admiral just before her death at the age of 112. "I asked her if she regretted anything," Al wrote, "if she was angry about the years her species had lost, if she wished things had been different." Had smiled at him with eyes that still held that mysterious human quality called hope. "Different? No. We are who we are because of what we survived. The quarantine did not break us. It made us. Every hardship, every setback, every moment of despair made us stronger, wiser, and more determined." She had taken his hand then, something she had never done before. Her skin was warm against his cool scales. "You gave us our greatest gift," she said. "You gave us a reason to become more than we were. Thank you." Al had not known how to respond. He had condemned her species to eternal isolation. He had expected them to either die or remain forever primitive. Instead, they had risen beyond anything he could have imagined. "You are welcome," he finally said, "and I am sorry." "Do not be sorry," replied. "Be inspired." She died 3 days later, surrounded by family and friends from a dozen different species. Her funeral was attended by representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Even the Sentinel Observer, their first public appearance since sharing their knowledge. The words spoken at her memorial were broadcast to trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. But the most memorable moment came not from any speech, but from a simple act. As body was committed to the stars in the human tradition, ships from every species in the galaxy formed an honor guard. Cruisers flew alongside carriers. Vessels drifted beside Nephron transports. For one perfect moment, the entire galaxy stood united in tribute to a species that had refused to stay in its cage. On Earth, in the garden where Sarah had once watched the stars with hope in her heart, a monument now stood. It was a simple structure, a stone pillar with words carved into its surface. The Council chose Exile for Earth. Humans never stayed for long. Beneath those words, added by unanimous vote of every species in the galaxy, was a second inscription. And the galaxy was better for it. Children of all species came to see the monument. They touched the stone, read the words, and learned the story of how a condemned species had risen to change everything. They learned that no cage could hold a species that refused to accept limits, that no exile could break those who carried hope in their hearts. And they learned the most important lesson of all, that the universe was vast, full of possibilities, and waiting for those brave enough to reach for them. The humans had reached, and the stars themselves had moved aside to let them through. Far beyond the edges of mapped space, in the region where the once built their great civilization, something stirred. Ancient sensors, dormant for millions of years, detected patterns they had been programmed to wait for. Signals of growth, signs of readiness. Deep in the heart of an artificial world larger than any natural planet, machines that had slept since before the Council existed began to wake. That had given humanity the first gift. But there were more waiting. And humanity, true to its nature, was already building ships to find them. The journey was far from over. It was only beginning.